Hi, this is Mariah Gullo from The Hollywood Reporter, and we're in studio today with Ike Barinholtz. Hello.
Hello, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for coming. I am so excited to interview you about The Oath, a movie that you wrote, directed, produced, and starred in.
Yes.
Well done, sir.
Thank you. I did other services too. I actually cooked some of the food. I'm not kidding. I did. Because it's a Thanksgiving movie and I wanted the food to look beautiful and appetizing, and I cooked my own Thanksgiving dinner, so I think you could add caterer.
You could add caterer to that.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, and were you able to agree with the prop stylist?
Yes.
Or were they no, I don't think so?
No, our prop master, the great John Gold, and I had many conversations about exactly what color the skin of the turkey should be, and I think we found the perfect compromise.
Excellent, excellent. What was the first seed of an idea that led to you writing this movie?
Well, I don't know if you guys remember the 2016 political election, the presidential election. Yeah. After that, that Thanksgiving, my whole family comes to my house for Thanksgiving, and after dinner, my mom, my brother, and I had a few drinks, and we got in a pretty big fight about the election, and we were kind of yelling at each other. There was a lot of pointing fingers, and the next morning I woke up and I said to my wife, I was like, "That's so weird. We got in a fight. We all voted for the same person." But that made me think, what's going on at other tables around the country? And as I started talking to friends of mine who had gone home to the various states, I knew that the landscape of the holiday table in America was changed forever. And I knew that you could get a lot of laughs out of that kind of, claustrophobic feeling of being at the house when the family's there. But I wanted to kind of make it a little bit bigger and blow it up. So we kind of added, folded in this looming government crisis, and so I really have to give credit to the 2016 election. At least it was good for something. For me.
You think that families have changed their interactions since then. How have people changed since then? Because your character, Chris, he did something that I identify with, which is looking at news reports on your phone and then announcing to whoever's available, guys, something new's going on.
Yeah, I think people for years, whether they were politically active or not, they weren't at 10. And I think now most people are at 10 just because of kind of the extreme circumstances that we're living in now. So yeah, I was like you, like Chris, I was kind of addicted to the phone, addicted to Twitter, and reading exactly breaking news as it was happening, in case I don't hear exactly the moment it breaks. And I kind of wanted to shine a light on how people maybe take in too much news and maybe aren't properly questioning the validity of the news that they're reading, aka fake news. But yeah, I wanted just to kind of talk about how in 2018 we are all kind of just at 10, and I understand why people are, and but I think when everyone's that heightened, it's definitely makes it ripe for satire.
Yes. And has it been cathartic, the process of making this movie? Have you noticed, have you pointed out your faults, put them on script, and then worked on them?
Yes, it truly has been. Basically, the year up to the election and the year and a half after the election, including the making of this film, I was way too attached to the news and I was letting it dictate my mood and kind of take away from the things that I love, like my family and basketball and working out and going to dinner and stuff. So I've been trying to get to that place where a little more balance, where I'm plugged in enough where I'm aware of what's going on and aware of these very real and sometimes scary changes that are happening in the country, but I'm also not letting it rob me of any of the things that bring me joy. So I'm trying to, and it's still a constantly evolving process. There's last week was a very bad week for people on my side of the aisle, and in those weeks you kind of fall, the balance shifts a little bit, but it's important to try to keep it as leveled as you can.
What are the specific events that kind of you show in the movie that are based on real events? Is there anything in particular that you...
Yeah, this kind of predates Trump, but starting with kind of the riots after Ferguson, it was kind of the first time in a while that we felt like there's a fragility just kind of underneath the surface, and people are angry, and so kind of the overall looming threat of Milwaukee. There was clearly some big event in Milwaukee that happened in the movie where people got hurt, and then obviously in the movie there's people opened fire on a group of protesters in New Orleans. So that kind of feeling of just civil unrest around the country. And then, the character of Mason, who's played by Billy Magnuson, who's so good. Initially, that character was an older guy. In my mind, it was like Michael Rooker. It's a pretty good Michael Rooker impression. Not too many people do Michael Rooker. But then Charlottesville happened, and when I watched that horrible footage of the marchers, the thing that kind of struck me was that they were all, not all, but pretty young. And so that was something that made me think about that part, and kind of caused a bit of an evolution where I was like, let's make that character younger, which I think is a little more resonant and definitely scarier for me.
Yeah. And what has the feedback been? Because I know that there were a few political movies that had experienced contempt prior to investigation. Like one of the things that comes to mind is Justin Simeon. We interviewed him, and he said,
Dear White People?
Dear White People, like just the title made people react.
Right.
Have you had any criticism, or has your feedback been positive?
Well, I've been all over. I think in 2018, if you're lucky enough to have a film that's going to be shown in theaters, I think it's very important that you go to the people, because you can't rely on them just coming to you. And especially for a movie like this, where some people might be like, oh, it's about politics, which it's really not. It's about an American family and how they are having a hard time kind of processing the modern political climate. So kind of traveling all around, the thing we get the most is people, the relatability. People being like, it's like you filmed my family. My wife is your dad in this movie, and I'm you. But we've been very pleasantly surprised that there are people who are clearly not on the same side of the political aisle as I am that have come up and, said, hey, I'm a conservative, and I like that, you definitely made fun of conservatives, which I don't like, but you also, you didn't really spare anyone, and your character, my character Chris, is the most liberal character in the movie, and he's kind of a jerk, and he's kind of insufferable, and he's kind of just yelling these opinions at his family, and he's not really doing anything about it. So by and large, pretty much everyone we've talked to has been happy, and that it's out there, and that someone's telling a story about kind of the emotions that they're going through every day. So it's been really encouraging. I highly recommend to all filmmakers, if you have a movie, take it to the people, go talk to the people, and talk to them face to face, and that kind of helps us get out of our little bubbles. When
did you know that you wanted to cast Tiffany Haddish as your wife?
When I first saw her in the movie Keanu, right? Amazing movie, Peter Atencio, so underrated. I remember seeing her and being like, I want to be married to her. In a movie. I have a wife who I love. But I was so struck by her authenticity and her toughness, and she's just real. And I was like, oh, she would be a really good match for me in something. And I just kind of banked that away in my head. And then as I started breaking the story of The Oath, and I knew that the center of it was going to be this husband and wife, I right away thought of Tiffany. And I really had her face in my brain on every key I typed for this film. And, luckily she got the script right either before or right as Girls Trip was coming out. And I kind of said, well, okay, Girls Trip's a hit now. She's not going to do the movie. But we had a long talk, and she really loved it and said, I've never seen this movie before, and this is a different part for me to play, and I want to do it. And she's so great in it. It's kind of a totally different side of her, I think, where she's internalizing everything, and she's kind of like silently suffering as her husband's driving her crazy, even though they're totally politically aligned, and she's just trying to do the right thing and be a good mother and a good wife, and keep the trains running. And then when the fuse finally does ignite, we get to see some of that Tiffany Haddish we know.
Yeah. Or was there anything in particular that she brought to the role that wasn't on the page?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, first of all, her face is so expressive, and in all the scenes that kind of have chaos, whether it's like the family fighting or the actual kind of violent fracas. She gave me so many reactions. And then also on top of that, like, she's kind of a great improviser. And there's a line in the movie, we can beep, right? You bleep, you can bleep stuff out. There's this great line in the movie where she refers to someone as a trash pussy. And I am not a good enough writer to come up with that term. That comes directly from the brain of Tiffany Haddish. And when you watch that line in the movie, that's definitely the second or third take, because the first time she said it, like, cameras were shaking, booms were falling because people were laughing so hard.
That's great. This film, like you said, does really ratchet up the tension. What is it like creating that snowball effect?
Well, you know, 80% of the movies in that one house, it's one primary location. And that's easy to write a movie in one location, but it's hard to shoot it and present it to the audience and make sure they don't get, you know, bored. And so what I try to do is I work with my DP, Carrie Lalonde, and my gaffer, Tony Nacco, and we really wanted to make sure the physical look of the film evolves as the tension grows and the situation gets more dire. So when you watch the film, the first half or so, you know, the frames are kind of big and the colors are vibrant, and you know, nice big wide shots, and people are kind of moving in and out of frame. And then by the end, you know, the frames are very tight, and you feel like you're in that room, and you've got to get out of that room because it's so uncomfortable and scary. So we really made sure, you know, as the tension goes up, the physical look of the film starts to kind of evolve with that.
Oh, excellent. This film kind of falls into a category, a new category, with movies like Get Out and Blind Spotting and Sorry to Bother You. What would you call that genre?
This is a big question, because we can be naming. This could be historical right now. If I give a great answer that really catches on, we could be like the people who named it film noir. So let me think about this. Now movies.
Now movies.
Let's see how, when we tweet this out, if it's getting a lot of traction, we can say we were the creators, and if not, we don't have to say anything. But I think those movies and The Oath are aware of the fact that we are living in these very strange times. You know, there's a lot of words that come to mind: absurd, scary, and kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you go and you look on Twitter, you could look at a tweet of like a pig wearing a diaper and laugh really hard, right? And then your next tweet is something about like, you know, children being separated from their parents at the border, and you start crying. And we basically are asked every day now to kind of go on this roller coaster of emotions, up and down. And I think those films and The Oath are kind of reflective of that. And it's hard to pigeonhole them as one specific genre, but I just think we're living in a world now that's not, it's not conducive to one thing. You know what I mean? It's not just a comedy. It's not just a thriller. You know, Get Out has some of the funniest lines I've ever seen in a movie. So I think, you know, now movies, as people call them.
Yes.
I heard someone say that. Call it a now movie. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I read about it somewhere. But I think to tell these stories that are reflective of this very strange world we're living in, I want to see more of them.
And why did you want to bring some dark elements into a Thanksgiving comedy?
Well, I think if I made the film a straight-up comedy, like more tonally like Neighbors or Blockers or something, I think, you know, people might say, you've given no gravity to these very real situations and problems and stress that we're all feeling right now. And I think on the flip side of that coin, if I went just a super dark thriller route, I think people would say, well, now you're missing kind of the humanity and the heart that we all still have. And so I wanted to, you know, kind of go a little bit beyond that and you know, make people laugh and then also make them feel scared and tense. And then at the end, you know, the overall message is we have to try our best to not completely cut the connections with our friends and our family. It's one thing to block someone who doesn't agree with you politically on Twitter, or if you have a coworker, you don't really have to deal with them. But a lot of people, I think, are cutting those cords, and it's very easy to detach. It's very difficult to reattach. So, you know, my goal is that someone walks out of the movie and is like, I laughed, I was scared, I should call my brother. That's what I'm hoping to get out of it.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if Trump were to see this movie, what would you hope he would get out of it?
If Donald Trump were to see The Oath, which I don't even think he watches movies. I think he watches just Fox News. But if he was to watch it, I honestly, I can't even imagine what happens in his mind. It's so hard to put yourself in it, but, you know, his review could be like, it was very funny. I thought it was very funny. I didn't like when the bad guy showed up. But I give it, you know, 2 small thumbs up. That would be like my dream review if he were to watch it. If he wants to watch it, we're happy to send a link. Can we do that? Can we ask the studio if we can send a link to the White House? That would be fantastic.
You know, there's 300 million Americans who in a few weeks are going to go sit down for their own Thanksgiving dinners.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for them?
I think 2-part. One, don't shy away from political conversation. Obviously, do your best to try to keep it somewhat calm. Don't get physically violent, obviously. But I challenge people to have these conversations, because if we don't have these conversations, our bubbles will only get smaller and thicker, and that's when bad things can happen. So I encourage people, don't completely shy away from it. Like, it's okay, it's happening, it's the world we live in right now. With that said, the other advice I can give people, and this is probably not, like, a shrink wouldn't give this advice, but I think it's one night, right? It's one meal. You're allowed to rely on some creature comforts. Rely on your crutches, you know? If you like to drink, have an extra drink, have an extra beer. If you like to, you know, food's your thing, you got pie everywhere. Eat another piece of pie. We're in LA. You can do a little bit of that legally. Do whatever it's going to take to get you through the night without permanently ending your relationships with the people that you're supposed to have permanent relationships with.
Good advice. So my last question to you, Ike,
Yes.
is, in all honesty, do you think things are going to get better or worse?
Look, I'll be 100% honest. After weeks like last week, where if you're like me, you were very kind of upset by what happened in the country, it's very easy just to say it's never going to get better. But I believe it will. I'm optimistic about this country, and I understand it's easy for, you know, a white man to say, don't worry, we're going to be fine. And it's not going to be that easy. But I do see these some lights in the darkness right now. And I do think America, despite its flaws, a lot of which we've just recently come to understand are bigger than we thought, you know. I think America is bigger and better than any one president or any one Congress. And the people in this country, the real people in this country, are good people. And I do feel that we will have a brighter day. And it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of people voting. If you're not voting, you're part of the problem. But I do feel that I believe in cycles, and I do feel like America will be back.
Well,
and you can take that to the bank, baby. Don't take it to the bank just yet. Hold on to it and wait until it happens, then take it to the bank. Yeah.
Ike Barinholtz, thank you so much for being here. The movie is The Oath. Bye.